Good to go?
One moment, I think just about. Okay, we are good to go. So I'll stop sharing and over to you, Daphne.
Okay, great. Welcome everybody to the event on Zoom. Welcome to our live Facebook audience. Thank you all for joining us. My name is Daphne Ewing Chow. I am a senior contributor in the area of food and agriculture and sustainability with Forbes.com. And this event that we're bringing to you today is part of the monthly Global Policy Dialogue series. It is coordinated by the UN Department of Economic and Social Affairs. And this particular event is entitled Advancing Equitable Livelihoods in Food Systems. This will serve as a food systems dialogue supporting the 2021 UN Food Systems Summit. Please note that English captions are available here in Zoom by clicking on the captioning icon on the bottom of the screen. And note that live French and Spanish captions are available in a separate website. And the link to the website is actually posted in the Zoom chat box. It's a bit.ly address if you look. There is a drop-down menu for selecting your language. Please note that this event will be archived on the UN DESA Facebook page at facebook.com, join UN DESA. So if you do want to rewatch it, you can do so there immediately after the event is finished. Please remember that our time is short and we have a lot of great speakers who I will introduce momentarily. So we are asking all panelists to keep their remarks as concise as possible. And panelists, as you know, you're just being reminded to keep your cameras off and microphones on mute, except for when your panel is ongoing. So to start our event, we're going to have two sets of opening remarks. The first one is going to be by Ms. Michelle Nunn. Michelle is the president and CEO of CARE USA, and she is the chairperson of the UN Food Systems Summit Action Track 4, which advance equitable livelihoods and value distribution. And then Ms. Marie Haga, Associate Vice President, the International Fund for Agriculture Development, IFAD, and UN Anchor Organization for Food Summit Action Track 4. So Michelle, I'm going to hand it over to you.
Great, thanks so much, Daphne. Really appreciate that. And it's wonderful to be with you all. I want to thank DESA for hosting this global meeting and bringing in so many participants to focus on this incredibly important issue of hunger and of livelihoods within the food system. And most importantly, how we really find meaningful solutions together through the process of the next year leading up to the UN Food Systems Summit. And I want to just say that I was asked to chair this action track a few months ago, and I immediately agreed for a number of reasons. One is CARE, the organization, was founded 75 years ago with the actual creation of the world's first care packages as we know them now. And it was to feed and support post-World War II European refugees. And so CARE has at the very heart of our work this idea of food and sustenance and the right for everyone to have access to nourishing food. I think we can all relate to the importance of food. It is something fundamental. We are all dependent upon food. We know that it brings our families and communities together. We know that it's really a fundamental right that everyone should have that basic right to nourishing food. And we also know that as we look at the UN Sustainable Development Goals, we can't achieve them without first tackling fundamentally the issue of hunger. We are all in some way or another a part of a global food system. We are either producers or consumers of it, and each of us has a unique opportunity, and we also have a real responsibility And I think that's what this dialogue enables us to see, to create a more equitable food system, and one that really does address the current inequities and the injustices that too often leave people without food. And also, what we may not always appreciate is that too often the producers of our food are suffering disproportionately from poverty and also from hunger, ironically, perhaps. So we want to ensure that everyone has nutritional, sustainable food and that they receive a fair price for their time and for their produce. So in some sense, it's quite a simple proposition, but it's also quite complex, as you'll hear from our panelists later. And so that's the essence of what we want to achieve through the livelihood track. I think it could not be more important. I think we all are seeing that we are really witnessing and experiencing real reversals in progress over these last few years, and that has been exacerbated through COVID. We face real retreat in terms of our progress in hunger, with millions and millions more people who are projected to be hungry next year. And so the UN Food System Summit is really an important opportunity for us to come together. And it's an opportunity for us to bring together the power of the public, the private, the voluntary sectors to really make a difference and accelerate our progress around the Sustainable Development Goals. So as we, just to break it down for you, as we work together to really focus on kind of a collective vision of where our food systems can be inclusive and sustainable and healthy, this issue of the Equitable Livelihood Action Track, which I'm chairing for the Food System Summit, but which is more broadly how we ensure fair livelihoods within the food systems, means that we need to really help create jobs to eliminate poverty, raise the incomes across food value chains, reduce the risk for those who are most marginalized within the food system, and also really increase value distribution. So our work together will examine the impact that we have on production, on consumption patterns, on people's nutrition, and on livelihoods. And I just want to say that one of the most important dimensions of our work will be focused on the equality of women. We know that we need to understand the experience of women smallholder farmers and the realities of the current inequities that they face, and how we can really create some solutions. So just to give you one specific example of what that looks like, in Northeast Nigeria, where CARE does work, women have lost access to the cash for work programs that allowed them to buy seeds and grow crops. Since the start of the pandemic, food prices have gone up 27%. So we've gone from 3.8 million people in need of food assistance to 5.7 million people, and that's just in Northeast Nigeria. So it's a 50% increase. A recent CARE survey showed that 53%, more than half of the women, said that the biggest concern, the thing that they went to bed at night worrying about, was food and nutrition for their families. So if you think about it at a macro level, we know that 43% of the agricultural labor force, and sometimes that's 50% in Asia and Africa, are women. They're also the main food providers for their households. And yet 60% of those who are chronically hungry are women and girls. So we know that their contributions are too often unrecognized and unrewarded, and we can change that. We know, however, that the pandemic has made it even more difficult. We know that women's jobs are about 1.8 times more likely to be lost during this crisis. And we know that that hunger is one of the, as I said, one of the primary areas of concern for women around the world. So we really do have to speed up our efforts in both the relief, but also in long-term food security. We know that as we respond to this pandemic, we must make sure that there are gender responsive safety net programs, and that we're really looking at a gendered analysis to how we are responding to cash transfers and to what's happening in terms of the markets. So a few of the questions that we have to answer in order to get this right and to create real change are: how do we support women to play a critical role in the food systems? Because they really do keep markets and economies flowing, and they have been since the onset of the pandemic. How do we support women in markets and agricultural value chains and businesses to be included in every COVID-19 response? How do we ensure that women have equal access to land, to decisions, to markets? And how do we design our food system so that everyone has access to nutritional meals and earns a fair price for their time and and their produce. And so if we could imagine a world in which all women earned a fair wage, they would be in a better position to afford safe and nutritious food for their families. So we can make an enormous difference. We see this happening around the world when women claim their rights as leaders and as farmers and as innovators. In CARE's work just over the last months, we've seen in Haiti, 43% of female vendors in the social safety net program, which we work, hired additional labor to help with their businesses, as an example. Women entrepreneurs in Rwanda created nearly 100,000 jobs, and they increased business profitability by 75%. So we can make an enormous difference, and we need to get working on it. So I hope that you all will join us. We have the opportunity today to hear from amazing experts, activists, public leaders to guide us to the answers to ensure that everyone can feed themselves with dignity and respect. And I hope that you all will be inspired to join us around kind of a global table to ensure that our harvests are sustainable, that they're equitably produced and remunerated and enjoyed around the world. Thanks so much, and I'll pass it to Marie.
Well, thank you very much, Michelle, and thank you to the organizers for this event. It's a true pleasure to join you here with Michelle. So thank you for joining us. IFAD is pleased to be a UN anchor agency for Action Track 4, Advancing Equitable Livelihoods. But we strongly believe that livelihoods are an important aspect for all action tracks, and that our efforts to advance this agenda should be joined by those in place for other action tracks. Because food systems produce much more than food. They produce livelihoods for millions of agricultural producers and employees in food value chains. They produce the nutritional status of people who source their food from them, and they produce impacts on natural resources and the environment. Transformation of food systems needs to enhance all three sides of the livelihood, nutrition, and environmental triangle of outcomes. We cannot leave livelihoods behind when we talk about nutrition, climate change, and natural resource management. And the reason for that is that we would, by purely focusing on other things than livelihoods in this triangle, we would throw millions of people into poverty. Because the rural poor are highly dependent on food systems for their livelihoods. And thus transformation approaches must explicitly address their ability to contribute and benefit. Otherwise, they will lose out in the process, and we will add additional challenges to food systems that we have already today. So moving agricultural production from input-intensive to knowledge-intensive systems and expanding employment efficiency and diversity in food value chains are two priority actions for enhancing a positive triangle, a harmonious triangle of benefits from food system transformation. IFAD's experience in building equitable approaches to improving rural livelihoods indicates that we need a mix of actions, from investments in infrastructure, technologies, and institutions aimed at improving livelihoods of the poor, to support for education, organizations, and social networks to empower and build agency for marginalized people. When we talk about equitable livelihoods, an overall priority is to identify, reduce, and eliminate barriers to inclusive, equitable food systems transformation. One key barrier, for example, is equal access to land and to financial and productive resources, including new technologies. These are rights we should ensure and are particularly important for women, youth, and indigenous people. Another key barrier is ensuring that workers in the informal sector can benefit from transformation as much as those in the formal sector. In the agricultural sector and rural areas, more than 80% of people that are self-employed are informal, and more than 90% of workers in the agricultural sector are informal. The challenges are huge. In the preparations for the Food System Summit, we are seeing a tsunami of evidence, ideas, and recommendations arising in the development of the 5 action tracks. These are being shaped into technically and politically grounded strategies to realize the ambitions of the Food System Summit. What we want to achieve are concrete and practical solutions to advance equitable livelihoods in the food system. As we go forward with the planning of the summit, we will increase the coordination and collaboration across the 5 action tracks to ensure shared levels of ambition and coordinated action. This is, of course, not easy, but it has to be done. The Food System Summit in 2021 gives us an enormous opportunity to come together, generate and agree on new solutions, and to act on them. And I can't underline enough our need to act, come up with concrete ideas, and then having this as the basis for action. And this is why dialogues like today are so important. We must come together as experts and professionals in our fields to think big about the future that can benefit us all, and in particular benefit the most marginalized. So IFAD truly looks forward to continuing to work closely with CARE, the leadership team for Action Track 4, but also with the other action tracks to ensure the Food System Summit is a success. So thank you very much for your attention so far, and I wish us all a hearty, meaningful conversation today. We need the big ideas, we need the dedication, and we can jointly make the Food System Summit a great success. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Marie and Michelle. I think it's an excellent segue into our first discussion. I think something that really stood out for me was something you said at the beginning of your remarks, was that food systems produce so much more than just food. And that's what we're going to be talking about today. We're going to be talking, of course, about livelihoods. Our first discussion is going to be on the impact of COVID-19 and population movement on food systems livelihoods. Joining us today, I'd like to welcome Ms. Isabella Teixeira, and I'm not going to list their roles. What I'd like for them, each person to do, is speak a little bit about themselves. So I'll just list their names for now. Ms. Isabella Teixeira, Ms. Enda Murnintias, and Mr. John Wilmoth. If each of you could turn on your cameras, please. And anyone who's not on this panel, obviously keep your cameras off. And I'd like for each of you to just introduce yourselves and tell the audience about your organization and your work. And then we will, and just briefly, of course, and then we will move on to our discussion. So Isabella, would you mind going first?
Okay, thank you very much. Good morning from Brazil. I'm a Brazilian fully dedicated to environmental agenda. I'm the former Minister for the Environment in Brazil, but also I'm today the co-chair of International Resource Panel. We are fully dedicated to understand better how the new economies will come into food systems, for example. So what the role of circular economy, of bioeconomy, considering food security, food sustainability, and how we can have innovative bridges come together with natural resource efficiency use, considering how we can tackle climate change, biodiversity law, water stress or water security, and what is the innovative role that food security can play, or food systems can play. So I'm also a co-lead of Track 3. So we are fully dedicated to understand better how we can boost nature nature positive agriculture, and how we can bring together food, sustainable production, protection, and production. And this is very important because it means in a country like my country in Brazil, we have a tropical agriculture. And this tropical agriculture is fully different what's happened in non-tropical agriculture. And you need to go into these countries, consider the South agriculture countries, if I can use the expression, because we have developing emerging economies with full responsibility to address solutions for food production and food security around the world, and also food sustainability. And in my feelings is that we need to conciliate this, how we can bring the nature together with us. With COVID showed to us that we need a new relationship between humankind and nature. And this means that you have not only the short-term perspective challenges to feed people around the world, but you need to understand, consider the scenarios of 10 billion people in the world, in this planet, how we harmonize the relationship between nature and humankind. And food systems, they are critical for this, not only because of social aspect, as mentioned before, and also the challenge for job generation, inclusiveness, and poverty eradication, but the spirit of sustainable development goals, how we can connect things to be sure that we can have a fair development around the world, sustainable development around the world. I know this because I'm a member of the panel that proposed sustainable development goals. So we really have a huge debate how we can go into these big challenges around the world, but also how we can strengthen multilateral system and how we can come together as consider the diversity of societies that you have around this world. And also, as you mentioned before, not only you, Daphne, but also Marie mentioned before, you need to understand the impacts of the new economies, like how access of tools of digital economies that are very important, for example, to manage waste, food waste in cities. And this is something that, in my opinion, we should highlight here, how we can bring rural systems and urban systems together. Because we have these big challenges. In my country, we have around 90% of our population lives in cities, and we need to understand how we can manage better urban ecosystems, not only consumers, but to manage food waste and to access food waste. My last comment, or for my first comment here, my last comment in this moment is that we need also to understand the new role of private sector. It's not only supply chains or traceability, but this is very important. Now we can bring the food producer, the retailers, the consumers in an innovative way to make sure that we can use not only these funds, international funds to produce food and trade and markets, but how we can have innovative global commitment that will go, everybody is in charge or responsible to end the poverty, to end the hunger. So my feeling is that we need to connect the big ones, the small ones, really a deep commitment that it's a imperative moral commitment to go against hunger around the world. A country like Brazil, we are the most important food producers. Unfortunately, we have hunger back, okay? And this is fully associated to incomes. So we need to combine things. We need to understand when we address the food systems, how we can bring income issues and inequalities, key issues that must be addressed together. So food system, our transformation now, what is our ambition to have a transformative food system around the world, must tackle not only the threats like climate change, water scarcity, et cetera, et cetera. We need to bring the humankind as a priority, and we need to understand how we can play with nature to make sense that our transformative ambition will be sustainable, inclusive, and fair. We cannot forget this, and the hunger eradication, and understand the migration movements, what is happening, how the pressure is going on, is absolutely important to be discussed if you want to highlight livelihoods together with food production and nature protection. Thank you.
Just briefly, also Enda, could you just introduce yourself and just say a little bit about where you're from and your work?
Thank you very much. Thank you very much, Daphne, and good evening, everybody. My name is Enda, and I was the Deputy Minister for Natural Resources and Environment in the National Planning Agency. So this agency is very important. So also the role that I played when I was still with the government. One is mainstreaming all of the the global issue into the National Development Agency, into the National Development Plan. And so whatever Indonesia engage in the global forum and also global commitment, it is going to be mainstream into the National Development Plan. One. Second is also ensure that not just national, but it's also with the local government, because Indonesia is decentralized country. So with that experience, until 2019, I was also engaged as a co-chair of the independent global scientists who were tasked to formulate the Global Sustainable Development Report in 2019. So with that, I think I can share a little bit of my experience and Indonesia experience right now in food security and also impact of COVID. Thank you very much. I'll touch on the issue a little bit later, Daphne. Thank you.
Thank you so much. And John?
Yes, thank you very much. Good morning to everyone. I'm John Wilmoth. I'm the Director of the Population Division of the United Nations Department of Economic and Social Affairs. It's in the Department of Economic and Social Affairs. The Population Division, our work focuses on the documentation and analysis of major population trends. We also examine policies that influence those trends and the connections between population movements and sustainable development. And often in the work of the Population Division, we highlight the 4 demographic megatrends that really shape our world in various ways. Those 4 megatrends are population growth, population aging, urbanization, and international migration. And these are all very large trends in the population that tend to have many impacts on different aspects of sustainable development, and which also are affected by many different aspects of development. Another way that the work is structured is around the 3 components of population change, which are basically birth, death, and migration. These are the 3 ways that populations change over time. So that's kind of the basket of topics that the Population Division considers, but it's really quite broad when you consider all the different things that populations may interact with, population processes. And certainly food security and nutrition fall into that category of topics that interact and that traditionally been discussed in the context of population change. The Population Division was created in 1946 to serve as the secretariat for the Commission on Population and Development, which is a subsidiary body of the Economic and Social Council of the UN. The Commission on Population and Development is responsible for the follow-up and review of the program of action of the International Conference on Population and Development. This conference was held in Cairo in 1994 and was one of the major international summits and conferences of the 1990s. Now, at its upcoming session in April of 2021, the Commission on Population and Development will take up the special theme of population, food security, nutrition, and sustainable development. There are different aspects of that, and we've identified 4 broad areas of focus within the theme for the upcoming session. One of those is the topic of the discussion here today in this session, how food security and agricultural development are related to population movements and settlement patterns. Other topics include the long-term sustainability of food production and consumption, focusing on the impact of the impact on food systems of growth, including growth not only in population, but also in income and consumption. On the side of nutrition, the Commission will consider links between nutrition and population health, both in situations of hunger and malnutrition, and also in situations where overweight and obesity are the major issues. So I hope that gives you a brief overview of the work of the population division and why perhaps I've been invited to join in this since we support the Commission on Population and Development, which will be in some sense the first major event in 2021, I think, taking up this topic on the road to the Food Systems Summit later in the year. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, John. Oh, I have a. Sorry about that. My first question I'm going to direct at Enda and Isabella, and if we could just begin with you. My question to both of you, because you're both from developing countries, how has COVID-19 impacted livelihoods within the context of developing countries? If you can maybe draw examples from your own home countries and talk about how livelihoods have been impacted, particularly obviously from the perspective of food systems. And I'll start with you, Enda.
Oh, thank you very much. I think I like the to draw your attention to Ms. Nan and Mary Haga in the opening, that what we are going to seek tonight is about the concrete action that we can do together, and will be discussed in the summit. Concrete and practical solution. So just short, I wanted to share with you what are the impact of COVID-19 in Indonesia on food system especially. Of course, there are some negative impacts suddenly on this, not just food, but aggregate demand. But especially on food is the weakening food demand because of the closing of, caterer business, hotel and restaurant because of the COVID-19 beginning of April. And so demand suddenly are cut. So this is the one that is really hit, the food system and the household food security. Second is, at the other side of the coin is the excess production at the farm level because of this demand. And we know agriculture is very sluggish. They already planted in the beginning of January, for example, and now coming, they wanted to harvest, but then the demand is reducing. But from the people's, way to survive, I mean, people are really resilient in this case. And so there are a lot of innovative, a way to really fulfill the food sufficiency at the household and the community. One that is very interesting is the direct selling, because Indonesia IT and Indonesia startup based on IT are really blooming, and many online platform on food, on any, marketing, from transportation services and many other, goods as marketing. And so direct selling from small producer directly to the local consumer is happening. So when you can think about IT and you can think about agriculture, you can think about food, meaning women and young people, because this is women are really close to food business. And the other thing, IT are people who are literate on this IT. Who are they? It's young people. So young people become the mediator of this new food supply chain. Direct selling is over there. Second is also coping mechanism from caterer, from hotels, from restaurant are frozen food. So they cannot sell, fresh food and put it on the table because the restaurant are closed. So they also provide frozen food and deliver to whatever consumer. So thanks to connection on Facebook, Instagram, so they can really sell that. Or there is a marketing platform in Indonesia. The biggest one is Gojek. They also have financial platform GoPay, like Alipay and Alibaba, for example. And so these are the two network that is really we are fortunate to have that before COVID start. And another thing is also because of a lot of reducing working hours and also layoff, a lot of online marketing. Online marketing has also increases. Second thing that is also an opportunity is increased solidarity. So we are talking about that sustainable development goal, sustainable food security and all. Is the role of government is very high, but during COVID, people to people solidarity increases. Access of food at the farm level, a lot of them are donated instead of putting as a waste. So this is another side of empathy from producer to the needy consumer, especially. Another thing is also food donation from people to people. I mean, in Indonesia, we are Muslim country, so we have that experience. But during COVID, this food donation and other donation is increasing. Recent study that just came out yesterday found that donation during COVID-19 increases by 72%. And so 52% donation use GoPay platform. This is the financial platform. 68% payment use GoPay. So this is the thing that thanks to long process of development in Indonesia using IT, this is show that innovation on food system and also donation is a good opportunity to really tackle the food security at household and community level. This people participation, of course, is in. I wanted to touch on the interrelated social economic challenges, Daphne, if I may, because this is interrelated. That Indonesia also launched an additional big support for COVID in the form of healthcare system to make sure that especially the poor people who are the health card is paid by the government is really still have access to health care system. Second is additional social protection during the lockdown, the 3 months, critical 3 months that we have. So we also have additional food subsidy and additional cash transfer during the 3 months. And a new program on employment program where new layoff have sort of working compensation during 3 months, plus they have an opportunity for a new training. So when we are talking about people, private sector, community, and the government, these are the example, concrete example, then we can share to others during the COVID and then after the COVID. So I'll stop there and touch upon other issue later on. Thanks, Daphne.
Thank you so much. And it's really inspiring stories of resilience there. Isabella, I'm going to pass over to you. Have the examples from Brazil also been quite inspiring and indicative of a lot of resilience among your people?
Yeah, thank you very much, Daphne. I think I'd like to thank you also, Enda, for her comments, and you have some similarities when you compare Brazil and Indonesia, considering the lockdown process and how we manage COVID. But you know that Brazil, you have this unusual situation, political situation, because you have a president that is supposed not to address all the solutions that you need to be addressed considering the COVID crisis. Unfortunately, you have the federal government with contradictory actions, and it's very important to be highlighted here. And this is my first point. When you have a full reaction at the subnational level together with private sector and civil society. This is very important, not only to address vulnerabilities, but also to address food systems and how we can be sure that we can go into the informalities, the economic informality and the social inequalities, also together with solidarity. So it's very important to understand that in Brazil we have this first situation, consider the federal government versus the supranational governments and how private sector came together to manage and to solve and to support the crisis. It's very important to highlight this because it also has a high impact on food systems, and they have a full economic solidarity from the subnational levels to facilitate the access to food and also to manage the health. Private sector in Brazil, for example, put money to build emergency hospitals in 40 days, for example, in the country. So it's very interesting, the full response. The second response is also, you have agribusiness in Brazil. Agriculture is so powerful in our country. It's around 22% of our national GDP. And you raise the international trade, the international exportation, 12% during COVID crisis. It is very interesting because the agriculture, the agriculture sector didn't stop, okay? Not only agribusiness, but also for consider small farmers, agroecological systems, and the organic productions. You have really a full commitment, and this will well dressed by the federal government concerning the Ministry of Agriculture. This is not on the president, okay? We go into the sectorial interest, and they worked really organized to produce food and to make sure that you have internal food, but also the international trade will support other countries that have this gap of food productions, mainly the Asian countries. This is very important to be highlighted here. The third aspect that I'd like to say, and I fully agree with this, and consider the solidarity. You have not only solidarity among public and private sector, but you have food donation people to people, okay, and also civil society. The civil society in Brazil is so powerful, and you have a full engagement to address not only food system, but also violence. This is something that I like to highlight. In rural ecosystems, you have women fully exposed to violence, okay? And you have some aspects, consider COVID crisis and also lockdown, that the social specialists, they are working hard trying to understand the raise or the increase of violence, domestic violence in a country like Brazil. It's happened not only in the rural areas, but also in cities, but you have full engagement from civil society to protect women against the violence in rural properties. And it's something that is very important to highlight, because it's not only in Amazonia, okay, that you used to have this conflict on land use and deforestation, etc., but in other regions of the country, unfortunately, you have this behavior. Also, something that's important to highlight here, consider food access and what's happened during COVID. Brazil is well succeeded on digital tools. You know that our society has a almost full access for digital world and also digital tools, and e-commerce raised in Brazil in the really ambitious level, okay? And it's not only considering the consumption products, but also food. Part of the arrangements to access food, it was based on e-commerce, okay? And you have these retailers in Brazil with a high level organization that was able to answer the demands of the consumers that was in-house during the lockdown. So even I have this with my own experience, okay? I managed everything during this time, and I'm in quarantine since March, okay? And no problems with me and my family to access food, and not only consider the supermarkets, but also for the organic producers that I used to have my food from these small farmers. And you have this network, and they reviewed everything to prepare everything to attend the demands in our cities and also in our communities. So Brazil also has this response now. It's very interesting how the e-commerce has an impact, positive impact in this case, not only consider the packings and the packages, etc., the waste of natural resources, etc., but the other side that was full adopt to manage the demands for food in our society during the lockdown. So agriculture still is there. They didn't, the sector that doesn't stop, and not only to provide food for domestic markets, for international markets also. It's impressive that to raise 12% our international trade during COVID crisis. It's really impressive, something that we need to understand better this movement, but we remember that the countries locked down the frontiers at the beginning of the crisis, okay, and Brazil stayed there, and the agriculture sector is working hard to provide all the demands of national and international markets, considering not only the agribusiness for international market, but the national domestic demand based on small farmers and agroecological systems, organic systems. So it's we need to learn with this experience, and we need to learn more considering informality, social inequalities, and women's role or women impact on this. This is very important to, we are really surprised with the rise of the violence, domestic violence, and how women is so affect, not only in cities, but also in rural ecosystems. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Isabella. I think what really comes out for me, and I also am from a developing country context. I'm from the Caribbean. I'm between Barbados and the Cayman Islands, and the experience in this side of the world is very similar, definitely amped up the use of online channels to create markets that has sort of been dropped. And that actually is a really great segue into a question that I have for you, John. In terms of restrictions on population movements, how has that impacted food system livelihoods? I know we talked about with both Enda and Isabella how online channels were implemented, but how have potential opportunities and risks been impacted through movement restrictions and populations?
Well, that's a complex story, and I'm not sure that we really have all the answers for that. We will gain more data about this as we move forward. But by way of background, we're in the context of a world that is becoming more and more urban over time. And in 2018, about 55% of the world's population was living in urban areas. And this percentage is expected to continue increasing. It'll reach about around 60% by 2039 and up to 68% in 2050. So about 2/3 of the world's population will be living in urban areas by the middle of the century. A fun fact that's very easy to remember is that the change that is taking place in the global level of urbanization over 100 years, from 1950 to 2050, in other words, from mid-century to mid-century, over this time period, the level of urbanization for the world as a whole is moving from around 1/3 in 1950 to around 2/3 in 2050. So just a complete shift in the proportions urban and rural over that 100-year time period. So in that context, the world's urban population continues to grow. And we expect that it will continue to grow from its current level of around 4.2 billion to about 6.7 billion in 2050. And at the same time, the rural population of the world is not growing, and in fact, it is decreasing slightly. We expect it to decrease slightly from its current level of around 3.4 billion. And then a very important point is that these additional urban residents that we will have in the world, where will they live? They will live almost entirely in Africa or Asia. The additional, the growth of urban populations is taking place mostly in those two continents. So how does this shift toward urban residents shape food systems and livelihoods? Well, in general, one way is that urbanization and rising incomes transform the demand for food, with diets shifting away from staples toward more animal protein-based diets and processed foods. And this has often been called the nutrition transition. This has implications for the surrounding rural areas, which must adapt to meet these demands while dealing at the same time with the challenges of climate change and natural resource constraints. But the development of value chains to serve urban markets expands opportunities for off-farm employment, as we all know. But secondly, historically, urbanization has accompanied a transformation in agriculture, where farm size increases and farms become much more mechanized, and the need for agricultural labor declines. And ideally, then, there's growth in the manufacturing and service industries to absorb the labor that is no longer needed in agriculture. Now, we know that this transformation has proceeded quite differently in many low and middle income countries compared to what happened earlier in countries that industrialized earlier. They've experienced some of the decline in the share of employment in agriculture, but they've not always seen the same level of off-farm job creation. So in this context, there's considerable pressure for migration to cities, yet sometimes not great opportunities for people once they arrive in cities because of insufficient job opportunities. And moving forward, we need inclusive transformations that improve the living conditions and employment opportunities in both rural and urban areas. Historically, this transition toward more urban living has coincided with what we call the demographic transition, which consists of the decline over time in levels of mortality and fertility. As life expectancy goes up, family size tends to come down, but in between, there's a period of rapid growth, because I think everyone agrees on reducing the death rate, but not everyone agrees on reducing the birth rate. So there's a lag in between these two processes historically, and in that lag is a surge of growth. And that's the growth that we've seen of the human population over the last 200 or 300 years, where the population is going from maybe 1 billion in the early 19th century up to possibly 11 billion by the end of this century. So that kind of tenfold increase in human population, it's a one-time event. It will not happen again. It's never happened in the past, as far as we know, and there's no reason to believe that it would have happened, because it required this fundamental change, which produced this growth. So that growth in the size of the human population, of course, happening at the same time that urbanization was happening, cities provided a way to absorb some of the increase in population. But then with the eventual decline in fertility, the growth slows down, and the world is much more urban, a much larger population, a much older population, a more urban population, and one that moves much more between countries. So speaking of migration, let's shift to this, because people ask us about what are the major impacts of COVID on population processes. And well, the obvious one is that a lot of deaths have occurred, excess deaths that probably wouldn't have occurred otherwise, and life expectancy in some countries may come down by as much as a year in 2020 because of COVID, just because of the direct mortality impacts of COVID. But beyond the mortality impacts of the pandemic, probably the major demographic impact has to do with migration, population movements. The Population Division produces global estimates of the international migrant stock. That's to say, we talk about stocks and flows in migration. And the stock is the number of people who are currently international migrants. And that's defined as people who are living in a country that is different than where they were born. And last year, we estimated that the total number of international migrants had reached 272 million in 2019. And in a few weeks, we will be releasing updated estimates for 2020. So while we do not produce estimates of numbers of people migrating within countries, this is likely in the hundreds of millions globally. Migrating for seasonal work or long-term relocation is an important source, of course, of personal advancement, opportunities, and income growth. So a key way that migration intersects with food systems and food security is the employment of migrant workers in agriculture and in food processing. So migrant workers provide much of the labor that goes to producing food in some parts of the world. Another way that's very important is the remittances that migrants send home that become part of the economy in their area of origin. It helps the food security of their families and communities in the areas of origin. So I focused really on the long-term trends for you, but I know you were asking specifically about the more recent short-term impacts of COVID. What has this caused in terms of disruptions in employment and income generation, both for urban dwellers and in rural areas? Well, due to the lockdowns and transport disruptions, the rural food supply in many instances has been unable to keep up with the demand coming from cities and food importing countries. The demand for work is not there to the same extent, because the demand for food in some rural economies is not the same. Migrants are also affected by global disruptions in employment and income, potentially affecting their ability to send remittances home. So the World Bank initially made some rather severe predictions about the decline, the anticipated decline in remittances from migrants living in mostly wealthier countries, including those in the Gulf states who send a lot of money back home to countries in North Africa or in South Asia mostly. And there was initially a concern that remittances would decline enormously, and this would have severe negative impacts on the populations in the sending communities of those migrants. However, some of the evidence so far actually shows an increase in remittances for some regions. We can't generalize and say that this is global, but we've always known that remittances are counter-cyclical, in the sense that when the economy is not doing as well, migrants tend to increase the amount of remittances that they send to their families, because they have an ability to do that, and they recognize the need. And it does appear that that's what's happened in some areas, and in fact, in some corridors, there have actually been documented increases in the level of remittances sent during 2020 over the levels that have been observed in 2019. So in short, this is still evolving as far as what the impact of the lockdowns and the changes in the economy and the job situation of migrants, what that's having is still a little bit unclear. For migrants, many migrants are living in vulnerable situations, and that includes living in very crowded conditions sometimes in areas of transit, or as they're along migratory routes, or when they're forced to return for, because of circumstances or by governments. So in these, crowded conditions, they're undoubtedly at higher risks of contracting COVID. But migrants play a very important role in the COVID response by working in critical sectors such as healthcare. And international mobility was drastically reduced at the start of the pandemic. We basically assume that there was no further increase in the number of international migrants after March of 2020, that it's basically just been flat. But we know that, in fact, some countries have been experiencing a substantial return of their migrants from abroad. And yet we don't have solid data on that, so it's difficult to say exactly how big that impact is. But it's, we've been assuming basically that the number of migrants globally just leveled off. In fact, it probably declined, but it's just difficult to document that because of all the returns, of all the people returning to their countries of origin. So I don't know if that answers fully your question. I hope that gives kind of an overview of how we see these connections to the food security and nutrition in the area of urbanization and international movements of migrants. Over.
Thank you so much, John. And we're running a little bit behind time. I'm going to try to just throw out one question and probably ask for a 5-second response from each of you. What I'll probably ask each of you to do is tell me whether you agree or disagree, and in one sentence, what your thoughts are, so that we can move into the next discussion. This question comes from Janice Cox from South Africa. And she says that COVID-19 has demonstrated the vulnerability of export-based food systems. What can be done to promote safe, sustainable local food? This is obviously requiring a long answer. So what I'm going to ask from each of you is, do you agree that export-based food systems are highly vulnerable? And is the answer to go and take a hyper-local approach? And I will start with Enda, and then Isabella, and then John. So Enda, what are your thoughts? 5-second answer, I'm sorry.
I'm sorry, and you are
Yes.
muted.
Okay.
Mute, Enda.
Yes, now. I think the answer it will be yes if a country is really imported food countries, for example, you know, but if the area is like diverse as in Indonesia, that this is an opportunity to really cut the long period or long food supply channel. You know, we are forced to locally provide food. So this is a good way of reducing waste, one. Second is also that in aging society, direct selling to consumer, it's the producer is forced to differentiate it between the general consumers and aging consumers, middle and high income consumers. So this is also a way for producers to really close and also cater a differentiated market. And third, I think it will be good also people to think that a long chain exported, importing, dependent food system is really vulnerable. So we should start to build like some local, well, I mean not local like a city, but intercity. I mean within country. You know, the direct cooperation across in Indonesia, for example, is across city, across provinces. This is very important. So we are not really dependent on import food or export. When we cannot export, then lose all of the money. So even though we have food, but we cannot eat it because the access or the purchasing power of household is diminishing. So I would say with COVID, then this is a way, or this is a calling to really thinking about a food transformation system. In the GSDR, we are mentioning about that it's not just, the cutting the long supply chain and waste, reducing food importing, exporting dependence, and is also this, using IT, not just for selling, but it's also for production efficient. Smart agriculture is a way to go in the future. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much. Isabella?
Oh, thank you very much. I agree, but at the same time, based on my experience, I'm a pragmatic woman, and we need to understand what food systems means around the world, and including the international trade. We need to change, we need a shift on the food, not only food system, the economic systems, okay? Because what you have today is an unsustainable and unequal relationship considering this environmental service and environmental assets from the nature. Okay, but I think that we need to understand what are the demands from the consumers and how the societies will indeed be supported to have national food production and to manage better your assets. But you know that around the world you have inequalities consider access of natural resource and also how you can produce food based on sustainable ways and inclusive way. So consider national food systems. You can have for small farmers, agroecological. We have this in Brazil. I'm saying because we have the diversity of situation in my country, okay? And also go into the agribusiness, we need to bring value supply chains. You need an innovative way that the consumers express your power based on our choice. So if you go into international markets, you need to understand what are the demands for international markets to put pressure, for example, how it's happening today against deforestation, not only Brazil, but all the countries that produce food based on, that consider deforestation as part of the food production. We need to stop this. And this is part of our choice. So how we influence the international trade systems, how we can bring co-responsibility for the big traders or the coordinators of supply chains, how we can make this transparent, how we can minimize the social impacts, and indeed how we can have fair international trade. Okay, I'm not sure if we can block everything, but I know that we can put pressure and we can make the guys change. And what's happened today in my country, for example, we have a full reaction from private sector again based on cattle range to go against deforestation in Amazonia. And now we have for soybeans industry against deforestation in Brazilian savanna. The guys must understand that the demands for the consumers, they are different. Okay, we need food, sustainable food, inclusive one, but we need to have also to promote autonomy for the other countries in such a way that we can share technologies. And you have the solution. This is not the situation that don't have the solution. We have the solutions. We need to have ambition to share solution and to have a common understanding, a new world that we need to come. If not, we have these, unfortunately, historical inequalities. Okay, and indeed we will use this to promote deep gaps among the different societies around the world. So my feeling is that we need a new approach for international trade to debate this, and the COVID is a good example how international trade has contradictory inputs. This is true. I mentioned that my country raised the international trade during COVID crisis. All the infrastructure, everything, a World Bank report highlight Brazil performance considering the COVID crisis and food producers, food production around the world, the international trade. What it means, and we go into the national requirement. Here we have the food production based on the agroecological system, small farmers. Yes, everything was there. So how we can manage this, how we can indeed make things fair, okay? And I agree that we don't have this economic domain that we have today based on the big ones, food producers around the world. We need to review this, but with a pragmatic approach. We cannot change the world in short-term perspective. We can influence to change in short-term perspective and work hard to change this in the next 20 years or 30 years, consider the other issue that are full connected. And in my opinion, as John highlighted, migration and population growth must play a strategic role, consider urban ecosystems. We need to put this in the core of the debate. Thank you.
Thank you so much. John, if I can ask you to give your opinion in our last 10 seconds, and then I'll wrap up this discussion and move into our next one. Thank you so much.
Just very briefly, I'll give you just my non-expert opinion on this particular topic, but I think it's consistent with what the other speakers have said, which is just that, yes, COVID has exposed a vulnerability of export-based food systems because of the global supply chains. And we need to work to make those more resilient, but we also should remember, of course, that globalization brought many benefits, and trade in food is just an example of that. And that has many advantages that I don't think we should throw out just because the pandemic made that system less functional for some countries. It's a question of finding more resilient global supply chains and diversifying the agricultural economy in countries to be able to respond better in these situations. But that's just my non-expert view of that particular topic. So thank you very much for asking me.
That is actually a perfect summary perspective of that particular topic. So you wrapped it up beautifully. Thank you, all three of you, John, Isabella, and Enda, for participating and offering your perspectives. This has been fabulous. We are running a little bit behind time, so I'm going to immediately move into our next discussion. So thanks to the three of you. I'm just going to ask you all to turn off your videos, and we will have the videos turned on for our new participants, our new panelists.
Thank you very much.
I would like to ask, well, first of all, just like to welcome, and I'll list our panelists and ask each of you for about a few seconds just to describe your work so that we can move into our discussion. So first of all, we have Mr. Ibrahima Hemathi, Miss Helen Akini Onyango, Mr. Loe Radwan, Miss Antonella Cardone, and we are going to be discussing sustainable rural development to ensure better food livelihoods. Can I ask each of you to just introduce yourselves, welcome to all of you, and describe your work. Let's start with Ibrahima, please.
Thank you. My name is Ibrahima Ach. I'm the Deputy Director of the Future Policy System Services in Senegal, a project seeking to improve the business environment for inclusive agricultural sector through enhanced government policy processes and enhanced capacity of the private sector and civil society to influence policy formulation, implementation, and impact. I am also the former research director of IPAR, a West African think tank based in Dakar. Finally, I'm a member of the independent group of scientists for the 2023 GDSR. Thank you. Back to you.
Thank you so much. Helen?
Thank you, Daphne. I'm Helen Onyango from Kenya. I am the director of Helena AgFace. It is an organization that tries to empower women and youth through agriculture. We do cereal aggregation, but also share information and share market with the farmers directly instead of letting the farmers deal with brokers who at the end of the day take all of their money and they're left with nothing. I have around over 2,000 smallholder farmers in the western part of Kenya. So we work hand in hand as we try to make agriculture profitable and also mobilize other people to venture into agriculture. Thank you, Daphne.
Thank you as well. And next, Loe.
Thank you, Daphne. It's a true pleasure to be here. My name is Luardwan. I'm an environmental engineer and activist from Egypt. I'm also one of the 17 UN Youth Envoy Young Leaders for SDGs. I'm a youth ambassador for the Foundation of Climate Restoration and a member of the Mediterranean Youth Water Network. Currently, I'm co-founding an agri-tech startup called Beetle, where we're helping farmers to adapt to the effects of climate change, preserve their crops, and rationalize their resources through using different technologies. Thank you.
Thank you as well. And then Antonella.
Thank you, Daphne, and a pleasure to join this panel today. My name is Antonella Cordone. I work at IFAD, the International Fund for Agricultural Development, a senior technical specialist for nutrition and social inclusion. And my role in the organization as a technical advisor is to ensure that IFAD-funded projects bring together all the dimensions of social, economic, climate, nutrition. So great pleasure to share our experience with you today.
Thank you so much, Antonella. So we'll just get right into it. My first question I'm going to direct at Antonella and also at Ibrahima. Antonella, if you could be the first to respond, and then Ibrahima. My question to both of you is, what are the underlying factors crucial to improving rural agricultural systems to be more sustainable and ensure equitable food livelihoods?
Thank you. IFAD is an international financial institution and a specialized agency of the United Nations that invests in rural people, empower them to increase their food security, to improve their nutrition, and supports them to increase their income. The question of sustainability has been, debated and experienced at IFAD for the past 44 years when IFAD was funded, and I worked with it for half of those years. What have we learned about sustainable agriculture and equity to ensure that the poor and the poorest are not left behind, because these are the people we work with at IFAD, and being part of the Food System Summit for Track 4, this is crucial for us now to go deeper and base also on our experience. So what does IFAD do? What have we learned from our experience? IFAD adopts a people-centered approach. What is crucial when we talk about livelihoods of the rural people is to understand who are we working with. They are smallholder farmers, they are indigenous peoples, they are pastoralists, they are fisher folks, they are mountain people, they are forest dwellers, and they are all distinct. They are all distinctive livelihood systems, and they correspond to diverse production systems and practices, to diverse knowledge, to biodiversity, to biocultural diversity. And they are men, they are women, they are youth, they are vulnerable sector of society, such as persons with disabilities, for instance. So first of all, when we talk about equity, we need to recognize the diversity and we need to value this diversity. And we need to work with governments and the people to find the solution to their challenges. So this is the who. Now, how have we done it at IFAD? By our mandate, IFAD's target groups are the rural people living in poverty and experiencing food insecurity in developing countries. And in this broad group, there are the poor, there are the poorest, there are the most vulnerable people, there are those who are in the middle and are growing their businesses, and these are the ones that IFAD works with. So getting at the core of the targeting for the projects that IFAD finances is very important. And what is the approach? We have learned that we need an integrated approach. And this integrated approach needs to foster economic, social, and environmental sustainability, and to ensure that the poor and the poorest are not left behind. And it's easy to say, but it's not as easy to get it right. So when we support youth, what do we need to do? We need to ensure that they are economically empowered, that the enterprises in rural area, on farm and off farm, are financed. We have to ensure that as agents of change, they can influence the policy sphere. We have to ensure that they are part with the same voice in policy engagement. And we have to ensure that they have access to credit, to technology. And so it is for women, where economic empowerment, where equal voices and influence, and where equitable workload and sharing of economic and social benefit is ensured through the project that IFAD finances to the governments. But going back to the how, no, still, the how is also listening, is creating multidisciplinary and interdisciplinary teams that work together. It's to listen to the governments, it's to listen to the people when we go and design projects with them, is to listen to indigenous peoples who are often the most marginalized people in the rural areas where IFAD funded projects are. And the other key elements are the partnerships. And the partnerships involve the rural actor actors in agriculture and on and off farm. And they can be the UN organizations who work in the same areas or countries where IFAD work. These are the local and international NGOs. And I was thinking when Michelle was talking in the opening that one project I've been working on in Myanmar, one of the partners in the area where the ethnic people live is Care International, and they're bringing their added value. And it's also working with the private sector that has an important role to play. So just to give an example of what an integrated approach and what my job is when we design and implement and support governments to implement their project in a typical IFAD funded project that needs to be nutrition sensitive. No, so what would be the typical result that we need to work together with all the partners is to increase the production of food, but also to diversify the food that is being produced, and to ensure that the food is safe, and to ensure that nutrition outcomes are reached, to ensure that there is greater availability of diverse food in the market. So linking the smallholder farmers to the local and international market in many IFAD funded projects. To ensure also that there is good nutrition awareness and knowledge and empowering. So who are all the actors? Are the people who are at the center of their own development. And these are the women, these are the youth, these are the elders who pass their knowledge to the next generations. And ensuring also that production is climate and environmental sustainable. So later on, maybe I can come back with some specific example, for instance, on promoting nutrition sensitive value chain, or for instance, working with neglected and underutilized species with indigenous peoples. I hope I have answered your question.
Thank you so much, Antonella. Ibrahima, what are your thoughts on this question?
Thank you, Daphne. I think those underlying factors, to approach them, we need a holistic approach. First of all, we have to think about the whole system, the food system. And thinking about the whole food system, you also have to think the parties of those food system. For instance, if you look at the level of the agricultural input at the producer level, you need to increase higher quality seeds and so on, so that farmers can improve their productivity. But you also need to better target input subsidies. There are several input subsidy programs, but targeting is an issue. So targeting input subsidy to those who are the most vulnerable may also increase inclusion and also ensure equitable food livelihoods. The other issue that has to be taken into account is skill development. We know that to transform farmers into entrepreneurs and to attract the young people who are unemployed into the agricultural sector, you need skills development. And that skills development should go above just the production level to support all those professions around the entire value chain, including, for instance, machine technicians, electricians, and so on. But also training people in cross-cutting issues like finance, accounting, insurance, ICT, and so on, that farmers need to operate in a more competitive business environment. The other point I want to raise is the need to take account of the digitalization and ICT. People have talked about mobile application, e-commerce platform, but it goes beyond. For instance, using new technology like drones and satellite data may help get better data, better statistics, and that will improve policy that will target those policies to reach those who are most vulnerable. We also need more effective policy targeting. One example is, for instance, if you look at irrigation and water management, you might have several types of intervention in terms of water management and irrigation, depending on the type of farmer you have to deal with. You can have large scale investments, you can have smaller scale investment, and so on. So targeting in terms of investment is crucial, but you need to have the data, you need to have the policy that is also targeted, including thinking about the trade-offs, because when you decide an intervention, you have to take into account the trade-off that comes with those interventions, and trade-offs include equity issues in terms of access. For instance, in agriculture, if you are not clear in terms of targeting, you may raise many equity issues, including socioeconomic status and gender. And gender may be crucial in that. We also have to invest in accountable policy systems. Accountability is very important, and that means that the private sector and civil society organization have to be in the policy process. They have to be able to contribute so that the policies that are designed and implemented can be improved. The other factor that has to be taken into account is political economy. When resources are scarce, groups are more likely, certain groups are more likely to win than others. And if you are working around food systems, value chains, you have to be aware of those who losers and winners, and make sure that it's inclusive enough so that the most vulnerable are not victims. And one of the implications is that when we talk about food systems, it's about many ministries. It's not just about the agriculture. It's fisheries, it's livestock, it's the industry because of processing and so on. Because we don't have one ministry for food systems, we need coordination, and we need also to promote collaboration so that the policy is targeted to the most vulnerable, so that we take into account the fact that the policy are designed to improve the lives of those most vulnerable, and so that we take into account also the trade-offs of these policies. Back to you. Thank you.
Thank you so much. We just got a notice from UN DESA that we are being restricted with our time because we've gone overboard. So we have another 8 minutes. So we have to be cognizant of that. My next question is for Helen. I think one of the themes that has come through from the beginning of these discussions until now, I think every speaker has raised it, and it is a topic of gender and the youth also. What I would like to ask you, Helen, how can women be empowered and play a greater role in the development of rural livelihoods and sustainability?
Thank you, Daphne. What I'd want to bring the audience to the attention is that as women, we make up for over 50% of the workforce in agriculture. And yet, on the other hand, We women, the only thing we can show for that is maybe a bad back, and which we can't even afford healthcare to pay for that, and yet we spend most of our lives in the farms doing farming, and we have nothing to show for that. Why is it so? We can clearly see that we are not treated as equal when it comes to men. We can't access the same things that men access. We make up for over 50% of the workforce, yet only a fifth of us women were entitled to credit facilities. So in order to make this more profitable and empower us, this has to change. Women have to access the same things as men. And if we do so, it is clear that production is going to increase. And when you increase the productivity, we know that less people are going to be hungry, and the issue of malnutrition is also going to be tackled. 2, women have to participate actively in policies, especially the one for land. I deal with the smallholder farmers, and it is very sad that when I'm registering, I only see names of men because they are the ones who own the land. But when it comes to me monitoring the crop and everything else, I only see women in the fields. Men are not there. They're actually in urban cities doing white collar jobs. And when it comes to paying back, it's the woman who is going to give you the man's number. Please wire the money to this number. And when you ask, the only response she can come up with is that I have nothing else to do apart from give him the money because my family depends on that. If I don't give the money to the husband, maybe my marriage is going to fall apart and I can't risk that. So it is very sad for us as women. We do all the work, but at the end of the day, we have nothing at all to show for the work that we have done. We need to know our rights, and the land rights need to be made in our favor so that you can have a say for it. Because at the end of the day, when you leave that land, it's the end. You've done everything, and yet you have nothing to show for that. Another thing is skills and knowledge transfer. As women, we need to be educated. Technology is changing, and we need to be made aware, especially as rural women, of what are the latest technology. What do we need to do in order to increase our productivity? What do we need to do in order to access certain markets so that our products at the end of the day can be more competitive and we can actually get more money from that? And another thing is that there needs to be more SMEs that support women. Women, we need to come together. Rural women just need to come together and form SMEs whereby they can go and actually get the financial assistance they need in order to work their lands and make them and improve their productivity. Another thing is partnerships. Governments need to come together and deal with this with rural women. NGOs need to come together, and other interested parties like insurance. Most of the time, we can't access insurance. So when it's a loss, it's a loss. And this is money that everything depends on. It's actually suicidal for us. You're putting in everything. You're not even sure if anything is going to come at the end of the thing, at the end of the whole thing. So we need the insurance people to actually come in and give us insurance. As for the youth, it is actually very sad that 32% of the African GDP comes from agriculture. And on the other side, only 2% of youth are actually studying agricultural courses. Why is it so? Because we all know agriculture is for the poor. Most of us are farmers, but at the end of the day, we are barely surviving. Why? And people are actually making money out of us. It is very sad. So in order to actually entice more youth, we just need to do one thing: make agriculture profitable. And how can we make it profitable? Simple. Like for me as a rural woman, I think that the cost of production is so high. Can it be reasonable so that my goods can actually be competitive on the market? And the government should also come with policies that actually protect me as a local producer. Also, there need to be skills training and transfer. Youth people need to be trained and need to be shown that agriculture is the way to go, because when you're looking at the future, I mean, everything boils down to food. Right now, everyone is talking about food due to COVID. So youthful people need to be trained, and they need to be given the support and the assistance they need in order for their competitive. And still on that, policies just need to come in and change on the policies on agriculture. So encourage me as a youthful entrepreneur to venture into agriculture. I think with that, Daphne, I think I've summarized everything. Thank you.
Thank you so much for that. And I'm just going to go directly into Loe. I'm sorry, I'm going full speed ahead. I'm just so conscious of the time at this point. Loe, could you please tell me, as a member of the youth, you have a technology startup. What in your mind are some of the most promising agriculture and non-agricultural technologies and tools that can be utilized to ensure sustainable productivity and better access to nutrition as well?
Thank you, Daphne. I'll try and keep it short because we're short on time. Well, there is a variety of technologies and tools that we could use to ensure sustainable productivity. We could use technologies from small sensors to more complex ones like biogas units that provide farmers with biogas and organic compost. My project G-Beetle, actually, we were helping rural farmers to adapt to these challenges of that they face from the climate change. We use rovers and machine learning algorithms, and we provide farmers with the recommendation that allows them to protect and adapt to the environmental shocks that they face. So I think the technology is available and the tools are available, but what we actually need, like Mr. Ibrahima and Ms. Helen mentioned, is the trainings and the skills development that helps the farmer to actually use these technologies and these tools. So we have a variety of technologies. We have AI, we have image processing, we have computer vision, we have everything that we could use to ensure that our crops are fully protected and that we increase our yield. But can the farmers actually use these technologies? That's what we need to work on. We need to provide them with the skills, the trainings that they need to use these technologies and these tools. So in short, that's my point. Thank you.
Thank you so much. And I think that actually, for me, brings out the main theme that we've struck on several times during these discussions, which is inclusivity. And I think that's a perfect way to wrap up all of these discussions. Michelle said in her opening remarks that oftentimes those who are producing the food are the most hungry. And I think that's what come out from what everybody has said, that we need to be more inclusive. We cannot forget anybody. And this should be one of the main themes in the Food Systems Summit coming up next year. So I'd just like to thank you all for bringing your passion and your hearts to the table and offering your valuable perspectives to these discussions. I'm sorry that we weren't able to get to more questions. Just as a reminder, the event is going to be archived on the UN DESA Facebook page at facebook.com/join-UN-DESA. So if you want to rewatch it or share it, you can do so immediately after the event is finished. And please note that the next Global Policy Dialogue will be a fireside chat with DESA's leading technical experts, economists, and statisticians in January 2021. Information will be made available at un.org/DESA. Thank you again, all of you, so much for your time. I think these have been an amazing discussion, and I'm looking forward to watching what all of you will be doing in the future. Thank you.
Bye.
Goodbye, everybody.
Thank you. Bye. Bye-bye.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye.
Thank you. Bye.